welcome back. What is your passion? What keeps you up all night? Makes you get up in the morning? For some people, it's music. Some people start real young. Our next guest is a perfect example of music, passion, starting young, wanting to be there, a songwriter. My name's Vin DeQuino. Our next guest is the one and only Petey Hop. Peter Hopkinson, how are you today?
I'm great, thank you very much.
Glad to hear that.
Yes.
It is such a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
You are a musician.
Mm-hmm.
Your whole life has been pretty much dedicated.
Yeah, pretty much.
You started real young.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about you and this passion for music.
Well, I got bit pretty young. We were living in Westchester when I was a kid. We moved to Dutchess County. And when we left Westchester, I was the captain of the football team. And when we moved to Dutchess County, there was no Little League or Pop Warner football.
Oh, man.
I had two older brothers who began playing guitar, and they didn't stick with it. They were about 15 and 17. So I picked up the guitar, and the other one played bass. So I had a friend I met down the street, brought the bass guitar down to him and said, "You're going to play the bass guitar. I'm going to play the guitar. We're going to start a band." And we began to play and learn our favorite songs, you know, classic rock and such. And then kind of started writing right away. You know, we just started making little riffs up and little songs. We got a band together, our best friends, basically. 2 guitars, bass, and drums, and away we went. You know, that's what it started.
So it's like the Beatles thing, you know, the garage band. You go into the garage and you practice and you play. What kind of music were you playing back then?
In the beginning, it was a lot of classic rock. This was in the early 80s, so a lot of classic rock, Hendrix, Stones, that kind of stuff, Southern rock, and some of the more harder rock that was coming in at that time, like Ozzy Osbourne and stuff. So a mix of different rock and roll styles.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much rock and roll. You got a lot of jazz in there these days.
Nowadays, yeah.
But back then it was more rock.
Only because that's what my older brothers and sisters were listening to. I have 6 older brothers and sisters who are definitely the foundation for a lot of my musical education. But my parents are swing babies. So I grew up listening to, you know, Duke Ellington and Glenn Miller and Benny Goodman, that kind of stuff, Count Basie. So I always had an affinity for that, unbeknownst to me why or how. But then I got hooked up with a really great guitar teacher, a guy named Ed Montleone, who was kind of a devotee of Chet Atkins' guitar style.
Yeah.
And he got me started listening to all kinds of stuff, and that was kind of the root of it. And then I went on to go to a place called the Musicians Institute, the GIT, Guitar Institute in Los Angeles, California. And in doing so, they have, you know, there's a class for every style with a band set up that you can play.
Wow.
So it really exposed me to all that stuff, and I really developed a great affinity for it.
So you really do have an education in music. It isn't just sitting at home and teaching yourself how to play the guitar. But that too, right?
Absolutely. Any great musician, you have to put on records, you have to try and learn it. You know, you spend your own time figuring out the scales and working it out. You have to do a certain amount of self-study because that's what develops your ear. You know, you have to figure that out.
And practice is a must.
Practice is a must. You know, there's a fine line between practicing too much and practicing on stage.
Yeah.
Some people begin to bring their practice things and play them on stage. You need to transcend the practice exercises and take it to the next level and make it musical and not just an exercise.
So your first gig wasn't Madison Square Garden?
No. No.
What was your first gig like? And what was that like to finally be a pro?
Well, I wouldn't call my first gig a pro per se. It was probably a friend's. One of the earliest parties was a friend's, you know, house party. We were in high school, and it was quite an exciting event because, you know, we got to play and we had a set and it was a show.
Yeah.
And it was pretty ruckus. The drummer, actually, he is a friend of mine, Paul Carroll. He was hitting his knuckle on the edge of the snare, and he was wearing like a white jumpsuit. So by the time the gig was over, he was covered in blood.
Oh.
And it looked so rock and roll. We thought it was the greatest thing ever. And then, you know, between that and the various battles of the bands in high school and such, and you know, talent shows,
It's
you know,
interesting how the battles of the bands did help a lot of groups get recognized.
Sure. Well, it focuses you. It makes you put out a better product. If you're just playing in your garage, there's no goal, there's no thing to aspire to achieve.
It's like writing. You know, you need someone to say, yo, that's good, or that's not.
Or a barometer of what is good.
Yeah.
If you're competing with other people, and not that music should necessarily be a competition, but it does give you an idea of what other people are doing and the level they're doing it at.
Now, you're a vocalist.
I'm a vocalist, singer, songwriter.
So I mean, I've heard going on to your website is like a journey, man.
A lot of music.
Great music, good music. I listened to it last night. You know, I put it on while I was doing things, and every once in a while I say, "Whoa, that one's good," you know, and I walk over closer to the computer so I could hear it a little better. Who are your absolute favorite musicians? People who you would say you are your idols?
There's so many, and this is a question that comes up anytime I do these interviews. I'll say probably top 5, 10 for different reasons. To me, Louis Armstrong is a huge influence on American
What a
music.
talent.
And my jazz band teacher in high school gave me the Great Summit, which was Duke and Louis, Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, the only album they ever did together. And just the interplay of them, the natural way they played together, and that kind of thing. But then, you know, I love everything from, you know, like we said before, rock and roll, classic rock, southern rock. I started to get into the roots of music. Any good musician, you find out what you like. Then you begin to figure out who influenced them. Then it's a journey backwards. So as I got into the rock and roll, well, I started to listen to the 50s rock and roll. Then I started listening to the blues. Then I started listening to country. Then I started listening to the big band stuff. Then you got, you know, your Louis Jordan, your B.B. King, your Hank Williams, your Johnny Cash, your Bill Haley and the Comets.
So many.
All back to Robert Johnson and whoever else. And you really begin to see what influenced people. And you learn that and you absorb it into your style, you know.
Is it difficult finding a band that's on the same page you're on?
It has, well, the two things I'll say about that. Number one is that modern era, it's very hard to make a living as a musician. So people are trying to get gigs that pay money. And so they're constantly, it's hard to get people to commit because they don't want to commit to something in case they get something that's more money. That being said, you know, personally like myself who have a vast array of influences, very eclectic style, that it's hard to find somebody who has a handle on all those styles. And, you know, you have to have studied that stuff. You have to really understand it. And not just what it is musically, what you're actually playing note-wise, but the feel of it. You know, a lot of the roots musics, which are blues, country, you know, those kind of things, there's a definite feel to them and a stylistic thing that if you don't actually listen to it a lot and play along with it and absorb it, you don't have it and you don't get it. And it's an intangible thing about music. Like you can talk about what the notes actually are, you can play them on an instrument, you can actually write them out, but the feel things are intangible and they're almost inexpressible. There's something you have to absorb naturally.
Here's an interesting question for you. In our lifetime, technology has really changed.
Absolutely.
I mean, I remember going into the National Auto Store and buying my very first record player, about this big, you know, and you lift the top and you put the record on top of it. And it was amazing because it played both 45s and 78s. You know, it was like, wow, all you had to do is lift this little thing and turn it, and it'll play 45.
And out it comes,
You know, and it was amazing. Well, today's a whole different world. How has that affected you as a musician?
In a lot of ways. I say this about the modern revolution of the MP3 generation and all that, and the home recording, the advent of that is two things. It's good for the artist in the sense that you have more control of the product. You're not beholden to a label or anything to get you to put product out. So that's good. Number two, it's bad because there is a sea of music that you now have that hasn't been vetted at all. So that's good and bad. The other thing about it is that, you know, yes, the MP3s are great for their portability and their ease of access, but generally the sound quality is terrible. And so that's why we're seeing a real resurgence in vinyl. Take, for instance, I have a great collection of vinyl that I've had since I'm a kid. All my brothers and sisters' records, stuff I've acquired over the years, 78s and beyond. And for my phonograph had been broken for years, and I've been meaning to get one. My mother-in-law bought us one for Christmas. Modern Victrola, you know, so it's got, you can CDs, tapes, play everything. So my son, who's 5, I said, well, buddy, I got some records, let's go put some on. Now, the sound quality that you experience when you hear a record with a good stereo is far superior that you can hear in a pair of headphones with an MP3. So I think people are starting to recognize that the degeneration of sound quality is not good. That part is coming
The availability is amazing.
In my iPod, I can carry 25,000 songs. It's great for reference.
There was a time when whatever you had on your shelf is what you heard.
That's right.
Period.
Right, and now you can just download stuff from the internet. You can look at a YouTube video and there's music. So the access is wonderful in that sense. So I think that, you know, hopefully they can get that combination of both, where the sound quality will be really good and the portability factor will be great too. And then I think it's going to happen. We're going to see it.
Yeah, I mean,
it's already there pretty much.
Earphones, you know,
Yeah.
headphones. To be able to put headphones on, and it always freaked me out. You know, where you hear the drums,
All the stereo aspects.
yeah, and it was like, oh my God, it's like separate. If you closed your eyes, you'd swear they were in front of you.
Well, I tell you, it's funny. I did a gig recently up in Lake Placid, and the bartender has an earphone set that has a subwoofer attached that you wear as a
my
backpack.
God.
Let me tell you something. That was an experience because you feel the bass in a way that's very kinetic, as you would feel music as if you were playing it or on stage or in the venue, which is something that people don't experience as much anymore because they don't see live music. You know, with the advent of recorded music in general, used to be you had to go someplace to see live music, or you had to play it yourself.
Yeah.
And then, you know, over time, you know, of course, now recorded music, people listen to DJs, they don't experience live music. You know, I had an experience where a friend of mine is a janitor down in Mount Vernon. So for Black History Month, we went and we played blues live for the kids.
Wow.
So we went out and we played a show, and we did 2 shows for K through 3 and then for 4 through 6. We got done the first song, the kids went wild. I felt like the Beatles. Like they went crazy. But it was their first experience with live music. They felt it. They understood it. They got the connection.
So different.
And it's very
to
important.
have it right there in front of you.
Absolutely.
So you are also a songwriter.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
Songwriting, like I said, I started early with some friends, and it became a thing that we would do. I mean, it's something you kind of have to do as a musician if you want to get past local or anything like that. And I really started to enjoy it, and it became something that is a bit cathartic in its own release because, you know, if you have emotions, you can write about it. You know, I'm a member of the New York Blues Hall of Fame, and blues is a big part of my style. I love the music, and somebody said to me once, they said, what is blues? And I thought about it for a long time. First, I'm like, what is a white kid going to say what blues is, first of all? But I really thought about it, and to me, it was the idea that it's a release. And you know, there's sad blues if you're feeling down, and it's an expression. There's happy blues. You're partying, having a good time. So it's a release of emotion, whether it's positive, negative, or whatever. And I think great music does that, and it connects people on that level with that emotion.
Yeah, it's like writing from the soul.
Yes, right. All you need is 3 chords and the truth, as they say.
Where do your lyrics come from?
Well, I think anybody, any writer of any sort, whether it's, you know, books, whether it's music, you are a product of your influences, and what you digest is what you know. So I read a vast amount of things. We don't have TV at home. I think TV is
No TV?
No TV at all.
Wow.
And I think TV has become such a vast wasteland of garbage, and I think there's still some great stuff on it, but I don't watch it. I read. And so, you know, whether it's great poetry, whether it's classical literature, which is still very relevant and very important, probably more than ever, whether it's political, whether it's social. I'm a big fan of history that is not necessarily taught in history class. You know, as you know, you know about that stuff. You know.
Oh, I do. That's what I write.
Right. Exactly. You know. And so, and even with my son, you know, we'll read books, and if I can, like I read your book, Sybil Ludington, and I said, okay, buddy, let's go. Let's do some of the trail.
Yeah, I was impressed when you said you read my book to your son.
There's a historical context, and that's one of the things that I think that is missing now is that local context of things like that. But, you know, and in songwriting, you know, when you write something like that, so you're a product, it's like what you eat. You are what you eat in the same thing.
Yeah.
In that sense.
That's right.
And so, you know, I try and digest a lot of things. I'm always reading things. And, you know, that's really where it comes from for anybody.
Your son, how old is he now?
He's 5.
He's 5.
Loves music.
Loves music?
Yeah.
And reading?
He loves reading, loves books. We read lots of books.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
wonderful.
Yeah.
That you can't give a kid enough of that.
Nope.
You know, you have to plant those seeds
Yep.
early.
Yep.
So he's into, is he into music so now?
He does. He loves music. Well, when I you know, started playing music for him, he fell in love with a few different things. One of the things he first fell in love with was Django Reinhardt, great jazz guitar player. He couldn't go to sleep for months without it.
Wow.
Which was great. He got into, he gets very kind of controlling about the music he likes. He's a kid, you know. I'll put on something, no, and we'll fight about it. So I'll have to introduce him in a way. Like I was doing an opening show at the Ridgefield Playhouse for a band called Asleep at the Wheel, which is a country and western swing band. So I said, buddy, I'm going to play this band I'm open for. No. So I said, wait a minute, buddy. I said, they were influenced by Django. He was like, okay. He gave it a listen, then he liked it. And so he had an AC/DC period. which he loves AC/DC, which is great rock and roll. It's easy to digest.
For that age, wow.
Yeah.
Holy.
But since we got the phonograph, I pulled out some 78s, and for a while he fell in love with one called Mr. Radio Man from 1921.
Wow.
Very cool. And then he found Louis Jordan. And since he's found Louis Jordan, we haven't gone back. Louis Jordan has been his thing for months now. Yeah, since Christmas.
I, believe it or not, have a wind-up Victrola.
Oh, nice. Yeah, yeah.
And I have 78s of Louis Primo.
Oh, nice.
Some, I mean, just amazing music
Yeah.
that in a lot of ways has been lost,
Yeah.
but incredible. You know, and some of the music is just amazing.
Well, you know, the thing is, back then, you had to be able to play. I mean, you know, when early recordings were happening, you'd have an orchestra around one microphone. If one guy made a mistake, you couldn't use it. So if you couldn't play, you didn't get the gig.
Yeah.
You know, and I was reading a thing recently how there was some kid who did lip syncing to some YouTube video, got 3 million hits. So now a record company picks this kid up, they're teaching him how to play and sing. So it's, you know, there's the video killed the radio star, you know. And it's, you know, I've said for a long time now that people hear what they see. I remember I was wearing a cowboy hat and I got done playing a rock and roll gig. We were playing like Hendrix and Stones, and I'm playing all, even modern rock like Pearl Jam and such. Somebody's like, "Oh, you play country?" I was like, "Did you just not hear what I played? Like, how did you make that correlation?" You know, but that's, people hear what they see, and there's a certain part of that. You know, and there's an image now.
Tell me a little bit about a musician's life.
A musician's life, it's like, well, you know, in the band documentary where they did The Last Waltz, I think it was Robbie Robertson said at some point, it's an impossible way of life. And you are up when everybody's down, and you are on when everybody's off. You know, so people get off work, they go out, you're on, you're working.
Yeah.
And so it is devastating to a lot of family life in a lot of ways. Luckily, my wife was a modern dancer, and she understands my allure. And she gets it, you know. And I've learned to manage that lifestyle in a lot of ways. One thing I learned from my father was a police officer, and my mother told me this many years ago, that even though he worked round-the-clock shifts, one of the things he always did is he ate breakfast at breakfast, lunch at lunch, and dinner at dinner. So your body's at least on a schedule.
Yes.
So
that's a good idea.
I took that, and I pretty much do that. And sure, late night coming back from a gig, or even on a gig, I might have a snack or something to eat.
Yeah.
So you're not starving. That being said, you know, keeping, you know, the schedule as regular as you can is very important. Number one, your body regular as you can. That being said, you're constantly creating work. You know, I don't have a job. I don't go to a 9-to-5 job. It isn't like I know what I'm doing for the next 3 years of my life. I'm constantly on the phone booking things. And I have help from some agents and some clubs that I have regular gigs at, so I don't have to scramble for everything. But, you know, you're in a local context like I am. I say to people all the time, I've done everything from Hell's Angels parties to Carnegie Hall, and everything in between. I played festivals, theaters, local bar gigs, everything. And I'm available for all your weddings, parties, bar mitzvah, and bris.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
difficult
You have
because
to
you know when you
diversify.
want to be sitting with your kid watching a TV show,
Yeah.
you got to be out doing your thing,
Right.
man. When my kids were very, very little, you know, I got married a little late. You know, I pretty much made it single through my 20s, and then all of a sudden, that coaching and tutoring and all those weekend jobs and night jobs, I'm saying, hey, my kid's home and I'm out here.
I'm at that point. I'm coming to that soon.
It gets difficult because you want to be with your kid,
Well-
but you have to put bread on the table.
Right.
And it isn't a 9-to-5
Yeah.
bread, you know?
I mean, I got lucky because, you know, it was very difficult, you know, before he went to preschool or anything, he was home with me because my wife worked 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. So he got up with me, and so yes, there was times coming home from gigs at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, getting up with him was really hard, but I'm glad I did it because we had that bonding time, and I was able to be there. Now he's getting older now, like I said, those after school things, I'm starting to figure out, you know, okay, you know, where's my priorities lie.
Yeah, how can I get and it's a constant battle of priorities. It really is.
It is.
And what people don't realize is your gig isn't only standing in front of the mic.
Right.
You're booking,
Yeah.
you're practicing,
Yep.
you're making arrangements for all kinds of things.
Sure.
You're making arrangements for travel.
Sure,
And,
right,
and
exactly.
there's travel time.
Yes, right.
There's so many other things.
Right.
Like a writer.
Yeah.
Writing is one part of what a writer does.
You're promoting it.
Yeah, you're
Well, you have to wear
promoting
so
it,
many
you're working
hats.
with editors, you're
Yeah.
working with publishers,
Yeah.
you're working with other writers. There's so much more involved.
I wrote it down one day, and I surmised it like this. I mean, I'm my own singer, guitar player, songwriter, PR, manager, agent, web services designer, driver, roadie, and it was a list of like 20 things if you think about it.
Yeah.
And, it may happen like that. I'll get a call for 3 different gigs. I work 5-6 nights a week. So it may be that I'll get 3 gigs in a week where I got to learn 40 songs for each gig. So I got 120 songs to learn.
That part always blew me away.
You get better
How
at it.
a musician can actually go out there and sing 10, 15 songs and know exactly what all the words are, know what all the music is.
We don't
I
always.
just don't know. I've made
I've made a lot of mistakes.
that would be, for me, the hardest part of the whole thing.
Well, one of the things is that also there's some gigs, there's a lot of crossover material, and some of it may be familiar to you. It's popular stuff that you have heard, of course, that you
it's
hear
in your head, but
right, but
I
to
don't
actually
know.
play it. Now, there's also what happens as a musician is that once you get good enough and you're playing a long time, you can hear the changes. Meaning, as the song's coming up, you know what the change is going to be because you hear it, you know it in your head. So there's certain songs I don't actually have to sit down and learn.
Yeah.
I just have to listen to them a little bit, say, okay, there's a couple of maybe little lines I have to learn that are like melodic things that are parts. But yeah, there's times when it's like, if it's repertoire, I don't know.
You're talking to someone who is basically tone deaf.
Right.
And the music teacher used to have me go into her classroom and sing for the kids.
Yeah.
To illustrate the fact that I could change keys 5 times and have absolutely no idea that I did it.
Yeah.
And she said, I don't know how you could do that. And I said, I don't know how you could stay on key. I don't even know what that means.
It's funny you should say that because I tell people all the time, the only reason I ever became a singer is because I held auditions for singers. And the world now knows, because of American Idol, what happens when you do that.
Oh, yeah.
The vast percentage of people that show up that think they can sing have no idea how bad they are.
Yeah.
And I said,
know.
well, I can sing in pitch, and I'm not that great,
Yeah.
but until I get somebody. Well, then I started to like it, and I started to get better at it, and I started to really enjoy it, and I realized that's another person I don't have to pay.
Yeah. I have a cousin who sings, and I hear him, and I say, do I do that? They say, much worse. And I say, oh my God.
Yeah.
And you don't hear it. I mean, I don't hear it.
Right. One of the downsides of modern technology, back to that, is that the advent of electronic tuners now, people who don't know what they're doing can get away with it for quite a while. Used to be before that, you could know right away they weren't even in tune.
Yeah.
You could bang right there. They go to play and they're not even in tune. Done.
Kind of
Get off the
just as I
stage.
say, technology has come so far.
Yes.
It's just, I mean, it's absolutely freaks me out.
Yeah.
All
I've
these,
got a tuner
I
app
don't
on my
even know what
phone.
some of these things are.
Yeah, right.
You're talking to someone who has a
Auto-tune
telephone.
and-
You know what my telephone can do? My
Everything.
cell phone can make calls, take calls, and take pictures.
You can record music on a cell phone.
And it's a flip. No, not mine.
No, I'm saying.
I have the flip phone.
Right.
You can drop it out the window. Nothing will happen to it. To me, that's a good phone.
Yeah.
My wife's phone could pretty much walk her to work.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my
amazing.
God, all the things that are available today.
Yeah.
Synthesizers.
Yeah.
And just all these crazy things to me that just blow my mind.
Well, I'm a big fan of not only classic guitars and amps. There's a certain thing that you get out of old tube amps that modeling and such in the digital age, they can model it to a certain degree. And the same with the classic piano, organ, and electric piano sounds. That being said, I've A/B'd. I have a few classic amps. A/B'd them against modern technology. Not quite there. You're never going to get it quite
No.
right. And it's how they move air, and there's
And
actual
everything
things.
keeps changing so quickly.
And I say it like this: the analogy is this. Yes, a lot of the modern digital technology, it's like a block of cheese. You can eat it, but is it a fine brie? Is it a nice Gruyere? Is it the next level?
Cheese isn't just cheese. Music isn't just music.
Right, and the thing is that your ear has to develop to hear that. Most people who were born in the MP3 generation, they don't know sound quality is degenerated. So until you actually introduce them to it, then they can hear it. Same idea.
Let me just go back to lyrics again for a minute. Are there any lyrics that you know offhand, almost like a poem?
Insofar as my own or other people's?
Your own. Something that you wrote that you could say, here's a line I really like.
Yeah, I guess. Perhaps. So you want me to recite something?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see if I can without the music. The answers to your questions, if you seek them, you will know. You'll reap just what you sow and find out how to make things grow. Your life is but a teacup full in an ocean big and cold. A mouthful of saliva spit into the breeze that blows away.
Whoa.
So that's one of my songs called Another Sunny Day. And I wrote that one for my nieces and nephews before I had a kid. And just, life is limitless possibilities, and somewhat you're significant and insignificant in the same breath, Everybody is unique and individual, and you are but a grain of sand on an ocean,
Oh, man, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yep. You wake up in the middle of the night saying, whoa, I got a song.
Right, yeah.
You do?
Sometimes. Yeah, I've never
Yeah.
necessarily woken up in the middle of the night. I used to be very fastidious about documenting every little idea because I
Right.
thought it could turn into something great.
Yeah.
I realized over years that you're going to remember it if it's good.
Right.
I mean, I did figure out my process, which was good. I figured out that for me, most of my writing happens on a night off when I'm not gigging, in the same time frame that a gig would happen, which is, say, 8 to midnight, 2 a.m. And I would just start, fooling around, fiddling on the guitar. And I found out much later that most songwriters actually write lyrics first and put the music to the lyrics. I do it backwards. I get a guitar part or a melodic line that I like, and then maybe a line will come to me lyrically, then I'll start to write it, and it'll kind of reveal itself to me. And I've read this, I think it was, Paul Simon, and I've read similar things from, Paul McCartney and other people, that basically you're not writing this song, you're more like a vessel. And the idea is to allow yourself to receive the signal.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I tell my writers all the time.
And when it's there,
don't
you have
write
to
the
go
book.
with it.
Let your characters write the book.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I found that once I got my process, the first half an hour just fiddling with the guitar, that's where all the ideas come out. So I started to just video that half an hour. And in doing so, I realized that's okay, and then I could go back, then I'd extrapolate all the ideas, and I would flesh them out. And then there is a point in time where I equate songwriting with cooking. You got your 5-minute meal. Some of them come out like that. Some of them are like stews and crock pots. They take forever.
Sometimes I sit and I write a chapter, right straight through. I don't touch it. It's like, Other times, I write that chapter 20 times.
Yeah, right.
Well, I got some bad news for you, Petey Hop.
Just about done.
We are just about there. Where do we see Petey Hop?
You can catch me all over the tri-state area. I play locally. I have some regular jams. I do something every Monday night at Lucy's in Pleasantville. It's an acoustic open mic night for original stuff.
Wow.
So if people have original stuff, I encourage you to come. It's very supportive. Anytime.
You have a website.
I do, peteyhop.com.
So if we go to peteyhop.com,
Yep.
we can look at your schedule.
Yep.
We can see where you're playing.
Yep, you can hear
where
music.
you're going to be.
Yeah.
And one is even an open mic.
Yep.
Nice.
I do a couple of good open blues jams and just tons of other shows.
Cool.
Yeah.
So we look forward to hearing you. We look forward to seeing you. We have had the wonderful opportunity of being with Petey Hop, man of music.
Yeah, that's me.
Our pleasure.
Thank you very much.
You stay tuned. We have other great guests coming week by week. We have other great music coming. Go to peteyhop.com and listen to the man.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.